Yo. Welcome to another episode of the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show. As always, brought to you by Teach Barbershop, located in East Rochester, PA. I'm your host, Smitty. With me, as always, my co-host, Joe. Drew, what is going on, fellas?
What's happening, man? It's podcast 2 for me for the day. I'm excited. I had
That's
a wardrobe
right.
change and have a good time. We're in the double digits.
Real quick, I mean, they did you, they had you on. That was very nice of them. So what's the name of the show?
Yeah, so it's House of Yinzer. So if you know Leanne Lohman, it's a show that she runs with a couple other folks. But yeah, it was a good time. We talked about the Steelers matchup with the Saints this week, the rebuilding process, and what's that looking like for the Steelers, and what can we learn from like the Saints and like how they've lived in the post Drew Brees life, and kind of just how Steelers fans overall are mostly spoiled. So we had a lot of fun. They threw confetti on me. It was pretty hot.
Such a disgusting word, rebuild. I hate it. I hate hearing it, but it's the reality of the situation.
It's okay.
Drew, you haven't said anything yet. What's going on? Fresh cut, by the way.
Freshest.
Yeah, like that?
You can only say that if you're shirtless now.
No.
Family show.
Schefter can show his nipples on Monday Night Football. Why can't I show mine on this live show?
That's true. And did you see like his variation of the put that on dance?
Yeah, that was pretty tough.
He was using his entire arms instead of just the fingers.
It was pretty tough.
Tough.
You know why we can't do that, Drew? It's because we're not verified. That's why.
Well, I just paid $8 to get the account verified. So.
Oh wow, is that tax deductible since it's like a business?
I don't know, Zach. You handle that stuff.
Wait, what account?
AT412 Fantasy Football Show.
Are you being serious? If I go on there and it's verified, I'm gonna be upset.
He's gonna delete it. Wait a minute. Long time caller.
Ricky Dunks is here. I feel like where's he been?
Probably Ricky, just actually celebrating being like 9-0.
Yeah,
maybe. He gave us 3 questions for our AMA episode of Around the 412, and I felt like it had been a while. So here he is. Yeah, here he is back. Hi guys, how's it going? In my 2 QB lead, should I go with? Oh well, PJ Walker's probably not playing, right? Didn't they say it's to be Baker Mayfield?
I thought they said he was back.
I think Baker's gonna play. Walker got hurt, didn't he?
I heard the last thing that I heard about it was that PJ Walker was still their guy, even though he was kind of garbage. But let me check. I haven't seen anything new. I'm gonna pull up the news. We can talk about the matchups as I'm doing that, though.
I have something here.
Go for it.
Let me just read to make sure I'm interpreting.
So I've got PJ Walker to start at QB for the Panthers on Thursday Night Football versus the Falcons. That was 2 days ago.
Okay. Don't know what in the world that I was seeing. Maybe it was one of those verified but shouldn't have been verified accounts.
Well, you know what it could have been too? There was a lot of questions after Baker kind of like looked like Baker chip on his shoulder Baker, which is like the first part of the Baker circle, where it's like then he gets good and confident, then he gets bad again, and then
they should ride that for a little bit.
Yeah.
Are they at this point holding Baker out from starting because of the pick that the Browns get back?
Maybe it also could be
a 4th instead of a 3rd.
Maybe you know what? Maybe Baker has evolved into like the new age, like Ryan Fitzpatrick, and there's some sort of like Fitz magic capabilities within Baker where like you unlock him as a backup and like he does really good.
I was watching video that he converted the defensive tackle. I don't know if you saw
that. Back to the question at hand.
Yeah.
So if we're thinking about like the different matchups that they have, so PJ Walker actually has the second best matchup for all QBs this week going against Atlanta. Atlanta's defense is pretty horrid. They're giving up 131.5 points overall per game in the last 3 weeks to the entire team, but the quarterbacks specifically, they're the second best matchup, giving up 27.5 points per game. If we're looking at Davis Mills, he has an average matchup against the Giants, giving up 21.7 points per game. The Giants have a tougher matchup for the running back, which is really the strength of the Texans. That being said, given the news that we had with Brandon Cooks last week and him more or less, I don't know if it was holding out or just being disgruntled about the fact that he may be getting moved again. PJ Walker did have a bit of a flop game last week in a tough matchup, but I think we'll see him bounce back. He's given the most life to the Carolina Panthers team, and I think they've been pretty motivated since they made the head coaching change. So for me, it's going to be PJ Walker in that juicy matchup.
Yeah, I tend to agree. The only thing that gives me a little bit of pause here, I feel like I'm saying it every week, is the fact this is a Thursday night football game. But
yeah,
over Davis Mills, I'll take PJ Walker.
It's the battle of mid, so just take the better matchup. So.
Yeah, okay. But he's got Lamar on buys. Yeah, he's probably doing okay.
All right, so Drew, as always, we will start with some injury talk. You actually just added a couple right before the show started, but I think the big one to talk about here that we were kind of worried about and still are worried about is Josh Allen.
Yeah. UCL injury. I texted these fellas the moment that happened, and I was like, this didn't look good.
Wait, did you?
I don't even have your number.
Sorry, I DM'd you on Twitter. I mix them up sometimes. But yeah, he was flexing his hand and going like this, kind of like the Carson Wentz treatment. I thought that it happened actually when he threw the ball, and it might have like gave a little bit, kind of like what happened with Ben. But I actually watched the tape today. It was the play before he got hit in an awkward angle.
You're talking about the 4th down play you thought it happened?
No, I thought it happened on the 3rd down play when he was.
Yeah, isn't that when it did when he got his arm caught up whenever he was making the throw?
I thought it was 2nd down or whatever.
Okay.
Through, so I thought it happened on 2nd, and he threw it, and then he did this. But it was actually he did get hit. I'm concerned about this. They're saying that he's day-to-day. The thing with this injury is that if you're a football player, you don't have the same range of motion as a baseball player, so it's not as significant for a football player because you don't have to go back as far when you deliver the ball. But similar to what happened with Ben, he said that he was suffering pain in his elbow for years, and it was just one of those things where the ligaments are built up by fibers, and they slowly just break away. I was eating a fruit roll today, which is so random, but I was just like ripping the pieces off, and it was kind of like the way it rips. That's kind of like the way your ligament would tear.
Wait a minute. You know what I mean? You rip apart the fruit roll up when you eat it, you're sick.
I don't do that unless I'm at work because like I'm not standing at my desk with this long fruit roll. You know what I mean?
Drew's just sitting there with pull and peel Twizzlers like.
Yeah, but you know what? Drew eats his cheese sticks without peeling them. It's super confusing.
I was deciding between that and the pull and peel Twizzlers stuff.
Wait, no, I definitely do not do that with my cheese sticks. First step. String cheese, you have to string it. But like, you know what I mean though? Like the way it was starting to tear, like he could have a partial tear, and then they think that he's fine, and then 3 weeks from now it could just burst, and then looking at Tommy surgery.
Aren't all sprains technically like minor tears?
Right. So I was concerned that this could have been much more. Kind of like, I know Ben, it took him some time, but I think I remember Tommy Maddox having a similar injury when Ben came in. He got hit from behind, and his arm gave out just like that, and it just flopped around there like with nothing but holding it in. It looked like the skin was the only thing holding it together. I was concerned that there was something similar to that, just not a full tear, but I thought it would be much worse. It's something that you have to monitor. And what's concerning is that it's something you have to monitor past this season. If he's not going to have an elbow reconstruction, he's going to have weak fibers within his elbow that you never know what could happen until it's either completely heals because he had enough time, or it completely goes and he has surgery. So it's something that I'm worried about. You're not going to sell him in Dynasty because he's the best fantasy quarterback, but like it's something that you have to worry about moving forward.
And that's like a full year recovery, right? Like that's not like if you miss like the rest of this season, he'd be good to go for next year. Like what's that time frame for healing that?
It depends. So if he has the surgery, it's a full year. It's kind of like an ACL within your elbow, and you need to work your arm back to have enough strength to throw the ball. So like it's different for every player, how they're going to respond. Ben was able to come back within the next season, and he was older. You expect him at his age that he'd come back on the quicker side.
Well, Ben also had that happen week 2?
It was like week 2. Yeah. Week 2. Yeah. So that is concerning, but he did look decent like at the beginning of the offseason, like when they put that video out with him with his fresh cut and everybody was all hyped up. That was still like what?
Started out 11-0.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I personally don't think he plays this week.
I don't either.
Yeah, I mentioned, I don't know how much we want to read into it, but Dan Orlovsky was on Pat McAfee's show and was talking about it. And he said he doesn't think that he'll play this week. He thinks that it's in Buffalo's best interest to rest him and look at this like big picture.
Right.
And knowing that Dan Orlovsky has a bit of a relationship with Ken Dorsey, the OC of the Bills, I feel like he might have a little bit of insight there into why he's saying that. So,
yeah. And the Bills can beat the Vikings with Case Keenum and Stephon Diggs in their revenge game.
Hey, respect the Vikings.
They're going to Buffalo. They're at
what
home.
time's that game?
1, right?
I think it's a 1 o'clock one as well.
Oh
yeah.
Man, I don't know now. If it was like a 4 o'clock game, I'm like, I'm taking the money line on the Bills no matter what they throw at me. But 1 o'clock, that's a little.
Well, it definitely ain't going to be the 8.5 line that it was.
Oh no, was it really 8.5?
Yeah.
Wow.
Against the team, the 7-1 or whatever Vikings, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, they're the quietest 7-1 team in the league. I feel like it's very strange.
So Ricky's supposed to face Josh Allen this week.
I would play defense on this and actually pick up Case Keenum now if he hasn't already been picked up.
He should have been by now, or else that guy's not thinking clearly.
Yeah. Moving along, Drew, Aaron Jones.
He suffered an ankle injury. In my eyes, this was something similar to like Jonathan Taylor. They said that he's going to be okay. I'm just worried that it's going to linger throughout the season, and you could potentially see him miss time because it could
flare ups.
Yeah, it could flare up. He could take a hit or some rotational aspect where he gets tackled and it just hurts a little bit. He could be in and out of the lineup. So it looks like he's going to play. Obviously, you have to monitor everything because if he practices at all and tweaks it during that point, you never know. Yeah, this could linger all year. So if you could maybe get AJ Dillon because he's been terrible and he might have been dropped in your league.
Probably is on waivers. Yeah. I've been contemplating for weeks to get rid of him. He hasn't done like anything since week 1.
Yeah.
Wonder who there was someone on here that was like a huge fan of his going into the season.
I actually have this in my notes here and I want to discuss this.
Okay.
Right now?
Yeah, the Packers stink, right? And my idea of having both of them as top 15 running backs this year as my bold prediction is that because their personnel was going to dictate them running the ball, and they haven't done it. And look at their record. They're playing to what they want to do, but not what they should do. My bold prediction should get half a point there because what do they have, 3 wins?
I don't think that's how that works.
Hey, respect the thought process here.
Speaking of that same team though, Romeo Doubs looks like he's going to miss about a month.
Yeah. Did they place him on IR yet? I know that they were.
I don't know if they've officially placed him on IR, but they said 4 to 5 weeks, I believe.
Ankle sprain. This could linger for a while, and who knows if they're out of the race because they're not winning games. Who knows if they just sit down the rest of the year?
Yeah, true. I didn't see the play, so I don't know like how bad it looked, but yeah, high ankle sprains are nasty.
Literally first play of the game.
Was it?
Yeah, I started him in multiple leagues. I had a bet for over like 39.5 receiving yards. He gets 18 yards on the first play. He goes out right away.
Yeah. Well, I have the ticker going at the bottom. I know a popular pickup. I don't know how you guys feel about him this week. I gave him a pretty decent boost in my rankings was due to this Allen Lazard. I just feel like he's kind of got to be a target monster this week, given the situation.
He's been surprising to me. I think he's been better than what I expected. So I had him ranked high too.
Yeah, he was consensus at 20. And then I don't think I had him as high as you guys did.
Yeah, I mean, I had him at like 10 or 11.
You had him at 14. Drew had him at 22. I had him at 26. They have a pretty tough matchup this week, so I'm pretty bearish overall on Green Bay. Just looking at it. So if I look at the ranks, let's see. Zach, okay, it wasn't as bad. It was like lower half, but still like average matchup. So,
yeah.
If
it was a good matchup, I probably would have had him at like 10.
Yeah.
So, what were you saying, Drew?
That there's this guy on their team that got some looks when he went out and had some buzz on Twitter. I don't know much about him, but I picked him up because you never know. That's Samori Toure. Do you know who he is?
Toure, yeah. Rogers was talking about him too because he said like he told him in training camp that like he straight up said you're probably not going to be on the 53 to start the season, but like just keep your head down, keep working. I guarantee that we're going to play some games together this year. He said they had pretty good chemistry in the offseason, so
I was high when I said that.
I don't know what to make of it. I mean, to me, it's not somebody that I'm like, running to the waiver wire to pick up because of their wide receiver situation, but like, see what he does.
It's a good post waivers cleared. Like, I have a spot. Why not give it a shot? Kind of play.
Yes, that's what I did in Dynasty deep roster. Never know.
No, I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely worth a speculative ad. Same team, Christian Watson, right? Dealing with a concussion.
Yeah, so they said that he's going to be okay, but I did want to point out we discussed either a week or two ago about the new protocol. He took a nasty hit and the wind got knocked out.
I mean, this is like 2 in 3.
It's very recent for him. Yeah.
It's his second one. So he took a nasty hit and the wind got knocked out of him. And it wasn't really something to worry about with his head, but because of how recent his last concussion was and the new protocol, they decided to sit him out the rest of the game. So that's what I was concerned about a few weeks ago in terms of fantasy output. If a guy takes a nasty shot, wind gets knocked out, wobbles a little bit, he's going to sit. And that's what happened with him.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of concussions, this one just randomly popped up today. Matthew Stafford shows up on the concussion protocol.
Yeah, we discussed this before the show. I'm concerned about this because of what day of the week it is, and it's tough to get through the protocol. So as it is. You guys made the point that we don't know if maybe he was in the protocol earlier in the week and it wasn't reported. I guess we really don't know that, but it's a nonlinear injury. And if he was fine Monday and Tuesday, and then he did wake up today with a headache or something.
So he entered the protocol on Tuesday after the medical staff, quote unquote, did their cleanup after the game.
So that's, well, they played Sunday, right?
Yes, they played Sunday. He went into protocol Tuesday and they said it was the best thing for him. He didn't have any concussion symptoms during the game. He said some of the questions Stafford was asked after the game by medical staff, like they just said they felt it was most appropriate to put him in protocol. So they don't know if he actually has a concussion, but they're treating it as if he did.
That's
what on earth did he ask them? He was like, "Oh, hey, how about that Super Bowl win, huh?"
They asked him if he was going to get a blue check mark for $8, and he said yes. Well,
with this guy in protocol.
That is weird, though, because you think you would have heard about that after the game.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, it's weird to me. But it's obviously something to look for. I don't think that Matthew Stafford's being started in a lot of leagues. Hopefully not, because he hasn't been good.
Yeah, like 2 QBs maybe. They have a decent matchup this week, I believe, though.
They have a really good matchup this week, yeah.
So he's someone to consider having a backup option for just in case he does sit.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at Joe's chart. They've actually given up the most points to quarterbacks, Arizona, 29.8.
Arizona's just been garbage across the board. They're the worst defense in football right now. It's nice. The Steelers are like slowly falling just from being on a bye week. It's great.
Yeah, I mean the Colts now the worst offense.
Yeah, man.
Past the Steelers. So this is the beauty of a bye. Drew, in the last one I know that this could just be nothing. Dameon Pierce.
Yeah, I'm looking through this right now to get a little more because that just came out in the last hour and a half. So he has a chest and shoulder injury. That's what they put on the report. I don't think it's too concerning. Maybe something to monitor just because of his play style. Like he's a very physical runner. If it is something that could become serious, his play style is something that's going to warrant that type of injury because he's just a really physical running back. So I think he'll probably play this week.
I mean, he was still limited in practice, so I'm not like overly concerned. Like, especially for it being a Wednesday. Like, if you're limited Wednesday, it's probably like pretty good.
Right. Yeah, I think that he's fine. It's just something that maybe you keep an eye on going forward if it's something that could get worse just because of the way he plays. But he should play this week.
Very good. Okay. Any other non-injury headlines to come out of week 9?
Yeah, so there was a couple of big ones. So the first was, of course, on election week, Richard Joseph Mixon had the game of his life. 22 carries, 153 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 receptions, 58 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown, which is crazy. So you have a 5-touchdown game when he only scored 3 times in the first 8. That performance took him from an RB17 in points per game to RB6. So all the people that have been like, oh, like Mixon's been killing me all season, like, It's funny. It's almost like the Tyler Lockett, like in Drew's eyes, where like he hasn't really been doing too much to warrant where he got drafted, and then you have this huge outlier game that like moves you way up the ranks. So pretty interesting to see. Do you guys think that's the start of like something big for him the rest of the season? Or do you think that was just kind of like a fluke game and he goes back to his normal ways? Because throughout the year, he was struggling with like if you were looking like expected yards per carry, like he was not looking too hot, but obviously he got it done.
I mean, they played the I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle, but probably more towards the previous 8 weeks as opposed to what we saw last week. I still don't have that belief in the offensive line. And ultimately, when Jamar Chase returns, I think they're going to be throwing the ball a lot more. So
yeah, I think I will say that has to feel good for their game planning because it felt like a lot of times this year, especially recently before the Chase injury, that like they felt like they could abandon the run. And I think they need to be able to rely on it more with him being out because he's such a dynamic player for that offense. I don't think that means that T. Higgins isn't like a 1B kind of guy. It could be a 1 in a different offense. And I think Tyler Boyd is more than suitable at being a 2. But if you can have a little bit more balance there, I think it goes a long way for them as they kind of ramp up towards this like playoff chase.
I think he could be a potential sell high because as to what Zach said, I think that it's going to be different when Jamar Chase comes back. I think that they tried to ride him a little more with Chase out. Some people might have some recency bias and see that obviously that 50-point game. They might look at the fact that he's RB6 or whatever now, and you might be able to get more for him than what he actually is worth.
Yeah, I'm curious now that you say that, like what the peaked in high school chart looks like this week.
Yeah. I will say, like, I feel like we're kind of all collectively making one point where Cincinnati, it probably would be beneficial for them to create some more balance in their offense, even when Jamar Chase comes back. And maybe this week against Carolina did show that. Now, you're not going to have weeks like this again from Joe Mixon, but it could be, closer to this than what we've seen the previous 8 weeks. It's possible.
So that's bumped Mixon like pretty much identical with like Kenneth Walker.
Wow.
So he's like the top of tier 3, which is like Mixon, Kenneth Walker, Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Ramondre, Damian Pierce, Chris Olave, Mark Andrews.
Ramondre.
Doesn't Kenneth Walker have like an insane playoff schedule?
Insane by insanely difficult? Yes, that was actually one of the things that we were going to talk about later in the show.
Okay. So
unbelievable, Drew.
Yeah. What?
You want to just tell everybody what we're talking about for the rest of the show right now, or?
I didn't pick that Tinder, so it was out of my head.
You know what? It was whenever they were cutting the hair, they just scooped a little bit too deep, and they just popped it from the brain.
It was the scalp massage.
You're sick.
Hard.
You're sick. Cool. All right. Moving on. Justin Fields, he set the record for most rushing yards by a quarterback in a game with 178 rushing yards. He had 4 touchdowns and a dominant fantasy performance. And I would like to take this time. So we posted a short on Twitter last week that was outlining what we thought was going to happen with the Chase Claypool trade. And I had mentioned in my kind of like reasons why I don't think Claypool is going to be relevant this year that I think that
nice picture, Adam.
I think that
should have wore that suit to your meeting today.
So I had mentioned that Fields is a 1-read option quarterback, and that's part of the reason why I don't think that he's going to be. So I was encouraged to take a look at the All-22 tape. Had a chance to do that, and I will say that I was wrong. So that's definitely cool. I think that was something that people were worried about coming out of college, but looking at the way that he's played this year, when Fields is abandoning the pocket, which is still pretty frequent, he's been running a lot, as we all know. But it's more of a testament to the offensive line. And when he does have time, there have been instances where he may abort the pocket early, but after you've been getting hit so many times in the game, I mean, it's a pretty reasonable thing to do. We see it with other quarterbacks as well. But he is making those progressions. And I think the biggest thing to say is that if we look at where Fields has struggled in the first 4 weeks and the turnaround that he's had in the last 4, they've really overhauled that offense. So I know that there was a lot of flack given in the first 4 weeks to their head coach, to the offensive coordinator, but they've really started to tailor that offense to the way that suits Justin Fields really well. And so shout out to the guys that were holding me accountable, and I'm a better football, voice because of that. So appreciate the feedback.
Did he just literally say what I was saying last week? When I'm
no, because they're still not throwing the ball more.
But they will.
Maybe. Why would they throw the ball more if he can run for 180 yards a game?
He's not looking to run, though. I was watching the game. He was looking to pass first. If it's not there, he's going to run it if it's there. But, like, he's trying to do so. I think it's going to come over time.
Yeah, maybe in 3 years.
No. Look at the jump that Jalen Hurts made from his rookie year to his second year to his third year. I mean, obviously, A.J. Brown's a big part of it. But, like, he's on a similar trajectory. There's a lot of similarities between what Jalen Hurts was in year 1 to what he is to year 3. If they get a bona fide wide receiver for next year, Justin Fields could really pop.
Maybe, sure. But I don't think Claypool is that bona fide wide receiver.
I don't think that he is either. I just think that they're trying to do more with the passing game. And if they do, he's going to be a beneficiary. I actually am kind of coming off that a little bit just because of how good Colt Kmet was last week, in my opinion. I think they want to get him more involved, but that's, again, reaching a little bit for later on for me.
Yeah. This goes back to, like, what I said. Honestly, it had very little to do with Fields, even if they are changing up the offense. Because I was of the belief, like you, Drew, that, like, they're going to try to do this going forward. I just don't think that Claypool is a guy that's going to benefit from that because I don't see him as that type of player.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I just think that my whole reasoning was based on I think the opportunity is going to at least try to be attempted. And right now, the ball has to go somewhere. And I think that they're trying to throw the ball more. So
I don't think that happens this season, though. If they're going to try to throw the ball more, it'll be next year. Like, I think they're going to be a run-first offense. They're going to throw the ball between 23 and 25 times a game. Yeah. And there's just not enough to go around for Claypool to be relevant as a.
I'm fine
with that. I'm fine with that. It was a dart throw. He was on waivers in a lot of leagues. So if he's sitting on the end of your bench, I had no issues with picking him up. If it works out, great. But I do agree that it probably is going to be more next year. And that's just what I'm looking for. I guess my argument's more supported within a dynasty perspective.
I love their offensive coordinator, though. I've talked about Luke Getsy multiple times. I was kind of hoping that he would be the Steelers guy and have Matt Canada not be back. But I think just look at the progression that we've seen with Justin Fields, and I think that's the type of offensive coordinator. I'm not calling Kenny Pickett Justin Fields, by the way, obviously very different skill sets, but a offensive coordinator who has the play calling experience and has worked with quarterbacks and has some track record of developing a young quarterback. I think Luke Getsy was the perfect hire for that staff. So
yeah, and I think the other thing too, and we talked about this on House of Windsor today, was there's a big change in the way that like offensive coordinators are utilized today, where it's like old school way of thinking. And I think this is how Matt Canada approaches football is this is my system. I know that my system works. I need the players that I need for the system to fit my system. And if not, it's a player problem and not my system.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at like what Getsy's doing, if you look at what they're doing, like in Miami, if you look at what they're doing in Philadelphia, they're saying, all right, here's my quarterback. Let me build an offense around this guy's strengths, and it doesn't matter what I think is right. I can do whatever that I need to do based on the players that I have. And I think that the most successful coaches and the ones that end up becoming head coaches are able to do that. Or they have a historically good quarterback, and like Peyton Manning, and then they are terrible for like 8 years until we figure out that Gase actually was absolutely awful and it was Peyton Manning. But
yeah. I mean, some of the most limited offenses, in terms of the personnel that they have, still find ways to have better offenses than the Steelers. And that's, goes to your point. Like, look at the Titans. Like, I know that they obviously traded away A.J. Brown. They had that type of player and weren't really utilizing him. He also wasn't the healthiest guy there. But, they have really nothing of a passing game. Would they throw like 10 times on Sunday Night Football? And
they didn't have a single receiver catch a pass.
And they went to overtime with the Chiefs.
Right.
And we're literally shutting Patrick Mahomes down because they were executing their game plan perfectly. Somebody like Pep Hamilton with Houston, that there's not much there offensively and still has them, in football games. It's just, yeah.
Treylon Burks anyway, designated to return, by the way. We can mention that. So
that's cool. All right. So, so shout out to the Bears fans keeping me honest out there. So appreciate y'all. Last but not least, Jeff Saturday, former center for the Indianapolis Colts, has taken over as the head coach for the struggling team. who asked, why am I a candidate for this? This team is currently 27th in yards per game with 315.1 yards. They're 12th in passing with 228.4 yards per game, which is astounding to me that a number that low is 12th in the league. And then they're 30th in rushing with 86.7. And Zach, as you already mentioned, they're last in points per game. So do you think that there's any glimmer of hope that Jeff Saturday, with no head coaching experience, can help the guys that they have in the Colts roster to make them fantasy relevant?
No. This is a disaster. I mean, it's literally a joke. I mean, it's making a joke of the entire process of the National Football League. The one thing I'll say is, like, maybe somebody like Jeff Saturday can help out the offensive line. I don't know. Like, that's probably what he should have been brought in to do, is to coach the offensive line. I mean, they're about to have this Parks Frazier guy, this 30-year-old, like, that was a quality, or what was he, like, the passing game coordinator for this team. He's called like a handful of plays in the NFL before. He's the only one on the staff that has ever called a single play in the NFL. I mean, this is literally a joke. I don't know what this franchise is doing. It was so bad of a press conference that it was good.
Oh, it was
the
crazy.
Introduction. Hilarious. The whole thing was hilarious.
It needs to be an SNL skit, because that's what it felt like I was watching during it. Like Jim Irsay saying he likes that he doesn't have NFL experience because he won't be scared and dive into the analytics of it.
We're in the top quartile of the top quartile of the league. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. To me, it screams we're going for the number one pick, because all of the older quarterbacks that we've tried to have suck. So we're just going to tank this year and see what happens with a new guy. But yeah, it's baffling. It's a really bad look for the league too. Like, there's just no way to get around that.
I might Joe Frick around and take the Colts money line this week, though.
Oh,
just like, it would be such a funny story if they hit, and the Raiders aren't good either. So, like,
well, Saturday was tweeting last week about, like, how bad the Raiders looked, and
now Devontae Adams is not going to get covered by anybody because he's on his fantasy team. So,
oh man, yeah. So that's all we got for our Week 9 headlines. I think that's plenty. But yeah, let's get to swiping. So if you haven't been on the show before, this is Fantasy Football Tinder. Every week we review 3 profiles that have popped up in our phones. Of course, just like Twitter, we don't subscribe to the premium stuff for Tinder. We save that for a little bit later in the show. But what you'll see when we get started is our little Tinder board here on the left-hand side of the screen. If we're vibing, kind of the message or the player for the week, we're going to give them that swipe right, and you'll see that designated by the green heart. And if we're not really feeling that profile, we want to get rid of it and move on to the next, then you'll see us hit it with the red X. So the first profile that comes across our screen for today is Throw Rogan himself, Mr. Aaron Rodgers. So he's 25th in points per game this season. His best finish was in Week 7. He was quarterback 12 against the Washington Commanders. He has 1+ matchup moving forward, which is against Miami. And then one more stat for you, just in relation to his performance last week against Detroit, who I thought was going to be maybe like a get-right game for him. In his last 41 games prior to the Week 9 game, Rodgers had thrown 75 touchdowns to 2 interceptions in the red zone. He threw 3 red zone interceptions in Week 9. Are you still riding with Rodgers, or is it time to cut the man loose?
I don't know when I was. So, yeah, I've been off the Rodgers train for a little bit here. I actually had a trade offered to me early in the year involving Aaron Rodgers. Didn't take it. Obviously, the lack of weapons doesn't help, but he isn't playing his best football either. I don't love anything about Green Bay's offensive situation. To Drew's point, maybe they should try running the football more.
I'm out on him too. He's owned in 90% of ESPN leagues, which is just way too freaking high. He's 24th in the league in expected fantasy points per game, 25th in yards per attempt, 23rd in completion percentage. Aaron Jones is hurt. Romeo Doubs is hurt. Christian Watson's been struggling. Sammy Watkins looks like he's never played football in his life. And Aaron Rodgers has COVID thumb. So
they need Vincent Papali type stuff to come off the streets of Green Bay and lead them to greatness.
I was actually very surprised that he was on Pat McAfee's show for the latest Aaron Rodgers Tuesday. I thought losing to the Lions would really be the one that broke the camel's back.
I think do they play the Bears anytime soon? Do you guys know? Because I feel like with him like dominating the Bears, like that has to be like that would be the one that would really do it for him.
I'll tell you one sec.
Of course, this isn't loading right now.
But yeah, while y'all are looking at that, I mean that's a 3 for 3. I think Rodgers is honestly droppable at this point in the year unless you're in some sort of like 2 quarterback league. But it's crazy. I mean, could y'all imagine that that like a back-to-back MVP would just like fall off like this like so quickly? Like it's just absolutely bizarre.
Very odd situation. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like it's not just the lack of weapons, in my opinion. Like his play himself, because it's not just like guys are dropping balls left and right and that's it.
Yeah, like he's missing guys wide open in the middle of the field. Like he's throwing these like red zone interceptions. Like it's very bizarre.
It's also like
Aaron Rodgers.
They were bad interceptions.
Him and LaFleur are taking some like I don't know if I'd say shots, but it doesn't seem like they're on the same page either.
No.
Like he said, like Rodgers was talking about needing to simplify the offense, and LaFleur was like, I have no idea what he means.
He had issues with them running so many motions. Like he was just like, let's just line up and let me drop back and sling it. That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
It was bad though. Like that interception that he had to Aiden Hutchinson, he was like, they start at this 2-yard line. He drops back 3 yards and he throws it like 5 yards short of the guy. It was bad. Like he just doesn't look good at all. He can't be in any lineups and he shouldn't be on any rosters.
But yeah, I mean, to Chad's point, shout out Chad for always popping in. Yeah, I'm pretty high on Case Keenum this week if he does end up playing for Josh Allen. But yeah, it's a fall from grace. I think you're seeing a lot of these teams, whether they had a franchise quarterback, but a lot of these guys that are getting old, they're finally starting to lose that fight to Father Time. So it's a tough spot for the Packers because it's not like he has a small contract that they can get out of. Like they're going to pretty much have to ride with that. What is it? You got another 2 years, 3 years left on that thing?
Isn't his dead cap this year, if they were to get out of it, like $99 million?
Yeah, it's something ridiculous. So tough spot to be in across the board, but we'll see what happens. All right, so our next profile, as we swipe left, is Chris Godwin. So I would say Chris Godwin, similar kind of question for you. So Chris Godwin's currently 35th in points per game in the season with 11.8 in full PPR. He's only topped 75 yards on the season twice and has scored 0 touchdowns. Tampa Bay is 25th in points per game with 18 points per game. Gotti the Hottie, are you in or are you out?
I'll let Drew go first this time.
Yeah, so Chris Godwin, when I looked at this last night, I was concerned a little bit about the fact that he kind of looks like Juju in his later years with the Steelers, where he was just running like 5 to 10 yard routes. And then with his ACL injury that he's coming off of, and so he had some hamstring issues, some soft tissue injuries, he doesn't look as explosive of a guy. But when you look at his target share is so high. He's averaging almost 10 targets a game. I think that he's a guy that you need to see if the manager that owns him in your league is frustrated with his output. He's only putting up around 10 points a game. It looks bad. You might be able to buy low on him. And if you can, I would. Volume always evens out long term, and the touchdowns will come. But I am concerned a little bit with how they're utilize him. I just want to believe in the player and the talent that he eventually will turn it around, and he could be a great buy low candidate.
Yeah, 0 touchdowns so far in the season. But that's the thing that I'm looking at is how safe of a floor he has, despite not scoring any touchdowns. The volume has been there. I've always mentioned, like, even with Mike Evans being the red zone guy and the big play threat, like Godwin always being the underneath guy for Tom Brady, the safer option, almost like his check down guy, if you will.
The chain mover.
But yeah, the chain mover. And that's, to your point, Drew, what we always consider Juju to be in the Steelers offense. So even if he is kind of going to that role, but at a higher volume than Juju and with a safer floor, I still think he's a player that's got to be in your lineup week in and week out. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm definitely still on Chris Godwin. Here's
a good one for you. So a week before the Cardinals got the Marquise Brown trade or injury, and then they got Hopkins coming back, I had a trade, kind of like a desperation move. Had like 2 wins on the year, and my team was loaded with Najee Harris, Joe Mixon, and Kyle Pitts. So I traded Mixon for Miles Sanders, and I had the choice of Chris Godwin and DeAndre Hopkins. I took Godwin. Just because I was like, I need to see it from Hopkins first. Plus, I don't know what's going to happen with Marquise Brown being there now. It's really not fun watching how this has played out, but I completely agree. He has double-digit targets in 5 of the last 6 games. To me, Godwin is kind of like a wide receiver 3 to have in your lineup, but especially in a playoff format, if you can guarantee that you're going to have 12 points in a game and then have the upside to hit 20 with a touchdown, it's a really nice floor to have. And I don't know if the Tampa Bay offense is going to realistically get better. It'll be interesting to see what happens, especially now that they're saying that Leonard Fournette might not be getting as many carries going forward as like a potential option. But that interior offensive line is pretty horrid. Byron Leftwich went from head coaching candidate to seems like nobody really thinks that he's good at coaching football anymore. And they seem like all kinds of disarray. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. But I do think that Godwin is definitely someone that's going to stay in my lineup just for that floor that you guys mentioned.
We were ahead of this at the beginning of the year when we were discussing their offensive line problems. They're on like their 5th offensive lineman at like almost every spot.
Yeah, and they were already down just in terms of quality players that they had. They were losing a lot just from the cap kind of casualties. But then
Kappa going to Cincinnati. Who's the one that retired? Marpet retired.
And then Jensen immediately got hurt. Yeah. So it was going to be a tough sledding for them. And historically, Brady has always done poorly when he gets attacked from the inside. He's always been able to manage well and move up into the pocket as long as he has like a good interior. But losing that, it's made life miserable for Fournette and their running game. And then Brady's suffered because of it too. But I mean, Father Time might just be finally catching up to the guy. Who knows? Maybe he is human after all.
Only multiple touchdowns in one game this year.
Crazy.
You just reminded me of something when you were making your point about Godwin, the injury that I was missing on the list because it just came out. Kyler Murray, it was limited today with a hamstring injury, which is something to monitor considering you get a lot of the value with his legs.
Hey, how
about – is it a double XP weekend?
How about I brought up to you guys Rachaad White last week. I didn't pick him as my only fantasy guy, but I brought up his name.
He's getting traction in that offense.
He overtook Fournette with touches.
Leonard Fournette was upset with the fourth quarter, not being on the field as much.
Yep. And I mean, he's been playing good. It'll be interesting to see if the Steelers end up doing something similar with Najee this week. I don't know.
Depending on who you believe and what you want to believe, there's some reports that will happen. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I don't believe it either, but it would be cool unless, I don't know.
That dynasty trade I made is looking pretty good for Dameon Pierce.
I already forgot it, honestly. But
Pickett, first round, and I got Rachaad White out of that deal. Someone offered me.
Oh, yeah, that's not bad. It's not bad. All right, so last profile of the day. This might be a little bit of a surprise here, but we have Ken Walker. So Ken Walker has had top 10 finishes in 3 of his last 4 games, including 2 top 3 finishes. He's the clear bell cow, even with Travis Homer taking 3rd down and 2-minute drill work. The Seahawks have the 4th worst schedule for running backs remaining. And for the fantasy football playoff schedule, they have San Francisco at Kansas City and then versus the Jets at home. All 3 are bottom 12 matchups. So San Francisco is the 2nd toughest matchup. Kansas City is the 12th toughest matchup, and the Jets are the 10th toughest matchup if we're at least looking at the last 3 weeks of work. So my question to y'all, is it time to walk away and sell high on Ken Walker?
No. I'm basically, even in this just a short body of work, I don't care about the matchups for Ken Walker. Like I just don't. And I think that while I love the Geno Smith story, I love what that team has been able to do with the passing attack, I still, and I know that we're getting pretty deep into the season now, but this is also, an outlook. I guess I should have asked this first. Are we just talking about the rest of this season?
Yeah. This is just like no. This is just a redraft thing. But to your point, Ken Walker is being debatedly considered as the RB1 in Dynasty right now.
Yeah, no, that was my point. Was I think that they're going to lean on him even more heavily in the future than the rest of this season, because I think with where we're at in the season now, like I feel like everybody kind of has their identity. Like is it feasible or possible that Seattle's passing attack just completely falls off a cliff and Geno Smith goes back to what we've seen in the past, I guess. But like with what he's shown up to this point in the season, like what are the chances of him just all of a sudden falling off a cliff? But to that point, that could also be a benefit because it would keep teams, they can't stack the box against Ken Walker because there is the threat of a passing attack. So I still really do like him. And again, I just think that I'm already at the point where Ken Walker the third is like matchup proof to me. So I don't care. He's going to be in my top 10 every week. I got him, I think, at 4 or 5 this week.
Here, I can tell you where you have him. If we're looking at running backs, you had him at 4. I also had him at 4.
Yeah.
Drew had him at 10.
Ooh.
I probably like typed his name in
twice,
like I always do on notes and then erase the wrong one. I'm looking at his stats as a quick glance here. I think you keep him. Just like Zach said, the talent is there, but mainly he got 26 carries last week. Week before that, he had 18. It was a tougher game. I think they got ahead pretty early against the Giants, and then they kind of let it ride.
You have his stats up right now?
Yes.
How many targets a game is he getting, like, give or take?
3.
Okay.
He was even getting that when Rashad Penny was on the field too. So that's something consistent there.
Yeah.
Rise. He had 21 carries 4 weeks ago, 23 carries, 18 and 26. Like you can't guarantee that type of volume out of many running backs, and it's very difficult to find a solid RB1 and RB2. With some of these matchups, you might downgrade him a little bit, but the talent is there. I think that he's a guy that you just have to depend on and ride this out. I mean, it is tough sledding the rest of the way. They have Las Vegas, which will be a boom, and then they have Carolina. Those will be booms. The Rams have been kind of back and forth, I feel like. Maybe he can do something there. I'm worried about San Francisco. I think that he could get the job done against Kansas City. The Jets are good, but I feel like their secondary has been like what's really making them. And Quinnen Williams has been a monster with his pass rush. But he might be able to do enough in that matchup as well. I think that week 15 is probably the toughest.
San Francisco?
Yeah. I think that you can get by with him, and I think he's a solid at least 15 points. Even if he has a tough matchup, I could still see him getting into the end zone and saving you.
Yeah. Man, this is such a boring week. You guys are lame. I think for me, like, it really just depends on, like, the makeup of your team, which is, like, the most, like, podcast answer ever. But to me, it's like if I have 2 other serviceable running backs and can, like, really upgrade my wide receiver room and still have 2 quality starters, then, like, to me, like, it's maybe worth doing. Just because it's like that is a tough matchup in the playoffs. But if I'm fighting for my playoff lives, or I only have like 2 real running backs that I'm going to be leveraging, then there's no chance that I can do it. But if I have an opportunity to say like Ken Walker plus like a random receiver and I can get McCaffrey back, then it's like obviously like, yeah, like that's something I would consider. So it's not like I would just trade him for anything. It would have to probably be a slight overpay. But if I have 2 running backs that I think that could kind of hold it down in those 2 spots, like I would rather have a receiver in the playoffs in my flex than the running backs, assuming like a PPR format. So I'm open to the idea, but I'm not nervous about it if I don't have a good move on hand that I can make.
I just don't know if you have enough running backs to say you can put them in your flex. I feel like the running back position has been so bad this season that,
like, let's say, for example, that you have, say, I don't know, Etienne, Sanders, and Walker.
You can't guarantee Sanders is going to be playing at the end of the year because they might clinch so early that they just let it slide. I think the Giants are going to fall off a bit.
I also think that the Eagles have had an incredibly easy schedule so far.
That doesn't change, though. That doesn't change like all year. They have like the 31st ranked schedule.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like that's not going to change.
Interesting. But I mean, that's kind of a situation where I would like consider it. Or like, what if instead of him, you have Ramondre? Like that's a pretty reasonable thing. Or Damian Pierce, like guys that you kind of like maybe you hit the wire on early, and now you have like this like 3 or 4 guys that are like usable. Then it's like, to me, like if I can get, say, let's see where he's at. So if I could get, I don't know, Jalen Waddle for that, like I would do that every time.
I think that I could be swayed if it's the right trade.
Yeah.
For Waddle, yeah. Ken Walker has been the feature back for 4 games. In those 4 games, he's had his worst game is 18 carries for 51 yards and a touchdown, but the other 3, 21 for 97 and a touchdown, 23 for 168 and 2 touchdowns, 26 for 109 and 2 touchdowns.
He has a nose for the end zone. You could see him getting into the end zone every matchup, and then he's saving you.
Yeah.
While you have Waddle on there, can we just discuss as another like Week 9 headline? I'm pretty sure that Waddle and Hill broke the record for most receiving yards by a duo in NFL history through the first 9 games. They're out almost like 2,000 receiving yards.
Yeah, there's just like no slowing them down. It's madness. I'm eating so much crow for that. It's crazy, but cool.
Did we see this?
No, we did not.
Dynasty trade, win now mode with strong young core. I almost read that as Stroud and Young, like upcoming quarterbacks. Would you trade Jameson Williams, Osborne, and Pierre Strong for CPAT and Julio? Have Eckler, Ramondre, and Walker at running back, JJ, Devontae, London at wide receiver?
No.
Which side are you?
He would be getting CPAT. Oh, wait. That's a good point.
If you're getting Cordell Patterson and Julio, just run as far away as possible in Dynasty.
I would rather,
that's why he said about the win now mode, because obviously he knows it's,
I mean, Pierre
not
Strong
on the side of the
is
future.
Not really useful. Osborne, I don't ever think is going to be anything. And Jameson Williams is still like the biggest wild card in that draft class. Like, he could be really good. A lot of people had him as the best wide receiver in that draft if he doesn't get hurt. Patterson, he only saw about 33% of the work, but they do know how to use him in Atlanta, and he's really the heart of that offense. To me, it's like I don't see Patterson cracking Eckler, Ramondre, Walker in that lineup.
Yeah.
I don't think it's worth it
because it's a big league. But Cordell Patterson's touchdown dependent.
Maybe. It was only his first game back too, so we'll see what his utilization is once he kind of gets more.
I didn't play him this week because of it being his first week back. But I just wanted to say about this, I really liked KJ Osborne in Dynasty, but I feel worse about, because like Adam Thielen isn't going to be there much longer, but I feel worse about it post Hawkinson trade.
Oh,
I think they're going to extend him, and he's going to be the second option in that passing game. Plus, they'll probably still add another receiver at some point.
He was the second option last week after like 6 days of practice. Like,
9 targets.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Patterson has been good for them, but I think that Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley showed them enough to still be in the rotation.
Does that just mean they use more Patterson more as a receiver? You know how much they throw the ball.
He said he's rocking Hilliard and Osborne at flex with Ramondre by. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's worth panic trading for a 1 week buy.
That's what I took from that as well.
But it seems like a lot to give. But like, if you were drafting Jameson Williams, you weren't expecting him to play this year, so I wouldn't get rid of him. For how old is Cordell Patterson? He's got to be 29, 30, right?
33 or something. He's like way up there.
Oh, is he? I would have thought 30 or 31, but
31, March 17th, 1991. So he'll
be 32 before next season, though.
Right. So I wouldn't be making that deal. I don't think it moves the needle enough. Personally, if you can keep Williamson, if you keep Jameson, then I'd say all right, whatever, fine. But I wouldn't be giving up that asset. It just doesn't seem worth it to me.
Mm-hmm.
What's Jameson's peaked in high school? Wouldn't be doing dynasty rankings, right? So
no, this is all redraft.
Trade cuts like iffy, but let's just see what it says. I just want to know where they have Jameson at.
And Cordell Patterson, he has a potential out at the end of this year, but if not, he's signed through next year. Then he'd be a UFA in 2024.
Dynasty comp for Jameson Williams right now is Josh Jacobs, Alvin Kamara, George Pickens, and Javonte Williams for Dynasty in terms of their value.
Yeah, that seems like a lot. I mean, if you could get Osborne and Strong for CPAT, then maybe throw in like a late pick, like a 3rd round pick or something like that you're never actually going to hit on. That's what I would do. I wouldn't be giving up Williams. That's what a huge overpay. But cool. All right. Let's get into it. So last segment of the show, only fantasy. This is where we will pay up, unlike we will not for Twitter. So essentially, what we do here is that we have one player each week that we're feeling particularly excited about, whether it be because of their matchup, we just have that gut feeling, or whatever. So we'll recap on where we landed last week with our only fantasy subscriptions, and then we'll get into it with whoever we have now. So, Drew, floor is yours as always.
Last week I had DeAndre Carter, one of my, I think my first or second miss. He was mid. I don't know. What's our cutoff?
I think they need to be like a top 10 match, top 10 performance, and like a wide receiver, running back, and quarterback top 5.
You should have went with Palmer, 8 for 106.
Well, we discussed last week I was going to go with Palmer, but
you were going to go with Keenan Allen.
Well, no, I said I was going to go Keenan Allen. Then he had his hamstring, and I said Palmer because he's still fighting his concussion, and then I went with DeAndre Carter out of default. Whatever. He was 5.
What's funny is I just looked and Josh Palmer was wide receiver 11. So like based off Jiz's criteria, it would have missed by 1. It would have just been hilarious.
I mean, they got to get in the end zone too. I feel like if we're going to make calls like this, they got to be someone that gets in the end zone if it's a running back or wide receiver.
You know what? I revise what I'm going to say. I think it's either that or they have to like exceed where they were, like their rank was by like a certain amount. Because it's like if you played a guy that, like you said, if you said your only fantasy was, say, I don't know, Taylor Heineke. Taylor Heineke's ranked quarterback 22, and then he has a quarterback 12 performance. Like that's still like pretty solid, all things considered. But I don't know. We're getting into the details. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, whatever. He was 5 for 53, didn't get in the end zone. The Chargers themselves kind of looked disappointing last week with the matchup that they had. I was kind of disappointed. This week, though, I felt like I was cheating a little bit, but I gave myself this player just because I've been in on him for a few weeks. So, like, I'm just ahead of schedule. I just didn't get to use him. Should have used him last week. I'm going with Justin Fields. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. Bold.
Like you when you're like, oh, he has the best matchup on Joe's chart. I'm just going to pick him. I'm just late. And the Lions have been pretty decent defensively the last few weeks. So I felt like that gave me a little bit of grace here. They've only given up 23.3 fantasy points per game over the last few weeks to quarterbacks. They completely destroyed Rodgers last week.
They're only the 8th best matchup instead of the number 1.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Anyways, he's averaging 13 carries a game. Right off the bat, right there, even if he's not doing much with them, even though he is absolutely doing a lot with them. He broke the record for rushing for a quarterback in a game last week. I'm going to ride this wave, and I think that everybody needs to ride this wave. Where did I rank him last week? Because I for this week, I feel like I have him pretty high.
Let me see. I can tell you. You had Fields you had him at 4. Zach had him at 3. I had him at 2.
Yeah, I would even consider putting him over 1. I'm starting him in every league I have him in, no matter what.
Over 1?
Yeah, I feel like I should have put him at 1. But I do my rankings based on what I think is going to happen, not based off of like my feelings. But for my teams, I'm going to be starting Justin Fields in every league that I have him in. I used my priority waiver on him this week. I was waiver 1. I have Lamar Jackson on my team. I was a little desperate for this week, but
you're not going to play Lamar? Come on.
I'm not going to play Lamar next week, I don't think. I think I'm going to keep riding Fields unless something happens. He's just been so good, and it's one of those hot streaks where you're just going to keep playing him until something bad happens. And he's doing it with his arm too. He had 3 touchdowns last week.
How many yards did he have last week, Drew?
I don't care.
That's not going to get done with his arm if he had 123 yards passing.
He's throwing touchdown passes.
I guess, but so did Chase Claypool.
Passes. In the red zone, he wasn't able to run it, and he found his receivers, Cole Kmet twice, and he's scoring touchdowns on top.
He's scoring touchdowns for sure.
If you get you get the rushing that he had last week, you get half of that, you're already looking at a floor where he's probably in your top 10.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I have him ranked too. I don't think it's a bad play. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's like cannon arm throwing the ball around.
He's not one-dimensional. I don't think he's one-dimensional like you do. They're not throwing the ball as much, but like he can do it. And if he has the opportunity to do so, I think he will. He's been so much better. It's not like where we're saying all this stuff where he had a completion percentage around 50 at the beginning of the year. Like
he's better, but his whole output is based off of scoring touchdowns because the passing yards are just not there. So it's like if he's not throwing for touchdowns or if he doesn't get in the end zone running, then you're pretty much screwed.
Yeah, so and I actually he's in my DFS lineup, not to cheat a little bit, and that's actually part of my argument with one of the other players. But yeah, Justin Fields is going to be great. I'm not concerned about this one whatsoever. I had 2 back-to-back bad weeks. I'm getting back on top.
Soft.
Did you go with DJ Moore again, Zach?
No.
I thought about playing.
That wasn't even last week. That was 2 weeks
ago. I know,
ago,
but like 2 weeks ago, you were like, "Oh, I'm at DJ Moore," and I was like, "Oh, is that because he's the darkest blue on the chart?" And you're like, "Yes."
But DJ Moore hadn't done anything the whole season.
Yeah, come on.
Justin Fields. Let's just pretend I was 3 weeks ago because I was high on him the last few weeks. He was on Tinder.
Actually, I feel like the pick that I had last week was more of a like obvious one than DJ Moore.
Who'd you pick last week again?
All right,
great transition.
Yeah,
I went with Ken Walker III last week.
Oh, Ken Walker.
He was coming off a game, 18 carries, 51 yards, and a touchdown. Just 1 reception in that game. Last week against Arizona, 26 carries, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 receptions, 20 yards. Balled out. This week, I'm going a little bit off the map, I guess. I was going to go with Juju, as I told you guys, but I switched it up. Let me spit some game to you guys on rookie tight end Greg Dulcich. He's only played in 3 games this year, but so far there's a lot of hype around this guy kind of breaking that rookie tight end wall that you see. Like tight ends do not transition to the league very well. However, in his first 3 games, he's got 2 receptions on 3 targets for 44 yards and a touchdown, 6 receptions on 9 targets for 51 yards, 4 receptions on 5 targets for 87 yards, 17 targets in those 3 games. He actually played with both quarterbacks in the course of those 3 games. Obviously, Russ missed the one, so he played with Brett Rippon. The Titans give up the 10th most points to the position. In 2 of the games, they've allowed 20-plus point games to the position. There was also some other stuff I was looking at here. So since week 6, since he was put in the starting lineup, he's finished as tight end 11, tight end 7, and tight end 9 in weekly scoring, commanding a 17.7% target share, 75% route participation. In only 3 games played, he is 5th in deep targets for the tight end position.
I think he's a dog.
Look at that mustache. Like, come on. And the hair? That's not right. That's not fair.
It's Weird Al.
Big on Dulcich.
Weird Al.
Not just this week either.
Yanka Dulcich.
I like him a lot going forward.
I like it.
He's a dog.
And who did you have? You said you had Ken Walker. All right, so that leaves it to me. Clearly the worst only fantasy subscriber on the planet.
So bad last week I tried to transition from the segment before you gave your guy.
Yeah, it probably would have been smart. So I picked Terry McLaurin last week. He had 5 receptions on 56 yards on 5 receptions, had 9 targets, but just couldn't find the end zone. I really like their matchup, so I thought they were going to do some things, especially with the way that he's definitely Taylor Heineke's like #1 guy. So I wanted to take Jonathan Taylor this week. I think he has a really good bounce back game and might be the best game he has this season. However, with the Josh Allen news, I'm taking a shot in the dark, and I'm going to say that my only fantasy subscription is for the revenge game of the one and only Case Keenum. I have no stats on Case Keenum to back off of this, but let me tell you this. So Minnesota is giving up the 4th most points per game to quarterbacks in the last 3 weeks, giving up 26.7 points per game. And they have the 2nd most points per game allowed to all receivers in the last 3 weeks. That being said, they are the toughest matchup to run the football against. So it's this big storm of like they're going to have to throw the football, plus Case Keenum, as you remember, with his good friend Stephon Diggs, were a big component in the Minneapolis Miracle a few years ago to send them and advance them in the playoffs. So I think the Case Keenum, my prediction is that he's going to be a top 8 QB this week in fantasy football. Thank me later, because it probably won't happen because I said it.
Breaking news. Josh Allen's playing this week. Every guy you had that's had an injury component, you thought they were going to play, they didn't. And this is going to be the inverse. You didn't think I was going to play. He's going to play now.
I have predicted show. I said that the Steelers were going to beat the Buccaneers before everybody realized that they were the Succaneers. Case Keenum, QB 1 through 8, lock him in pen. Take it to the bank.
I placed a future on the Bucs winning their division right after they lost to the Steelers because the odds were so good.
What was it?
I don't remember. I'll have to look. I'll tell you then.
Well,
so good he forgot.
It was weeks ago.
Oh, by the way, I also wanted to point out with Ken Walker, he was RB2 last week. So I would say, even though it seemed like a bit of a softball lob, but like he was only behind Joe Mixon, who scored 53 points. So like,
it was okay. It was an okay pick.
Yeah.
He's dogging me after picking Ken Walker. Frick out of here.
All right. So did you put together a DFS lineup? I feel like we normally talk about it in the group chat and it wasn't talked about.
I texted it to the wrong number because you blocked me. I texted it last night.
Oh, all
and
right.
You joked earlier that you don't have my number, so
I did block you.
Yeah. I mean,
did you actually sent your DFS lineup?
Yes.
I only text people that are verified.
Yeah, Adam Steele.
Kevin Adams.
Yeah.
Elon Musk.
Elon Mush. Anyway, so this is Joe's chart, which Drew uses solely only this, none of Drew's actual knowledge of the game to put together his DFS lineup. Joe, if you want to explain for any first time watchers or listeners what this chart is.
Yeah, sure. So this is something that we publish every week, not only on Twitter, but on Reddit as well. So what we do here is we essentially figure out what were the points per game that were allowed by the defense, which you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen for the last 3 weeks. So if we're looking at defenses that are struggling, that are cold, they have the dark blue squares around them. So you can see Arizona's been the worst defense in football in the last 3 weeks, littered with blue squares. Alternatively, if we look at Philadelphia, they've been the best defense in football across the board for the last 3 weeks, a lot of red squares. So this is a way just to look at situations where you maybe have a wide receiver 2 or 3 that you're trying to decide between. This isn't something that's like I'm going to bench this stud. If you're thinking back to the Ken Walker discussion that we had earlier, it doesn't mean that I'm going to sit him just because he has a hard matchup. But whenever you're constructing that roster, you can find, here's a player that might be breaking out or due for a big game just based on the matchups that they have. So this is something that we utilize every week. Gets published on Tuesdays, sometime during the daytime. So you can take a look at potential waiver pickups or when you're constructing that lineup. So, and then not only can you see the opponent that they're playing this week, but the opponent that will be playing that defense in the week following.
Awesome. And Drew? Go ahead.
Pull up Chad's question quick because it's relevant. So it looks like he's asking about how DFS is going to price Tannehill and Willis. Mm-hmm. So DFS lineups are priced essentially right after that week's games. So you can cheat DFS pricing because they don't update throughout the week. It's not like odds updating when you place bets. So Willis right now is actually priced at 5,000. Tannehill is probably going to be priced much higher still. Actually, he's down at 5,200. There's ways that you can cheat these lineups. I cheated last week when I played the defense against Malik Willis in a few DFS lineups because I just knew that he wasn't going to be very good. So to answer your question, anything that happens during the week is not going to adjust your DFS lineup at all, those pricing. So you could take advantage of kind of predicting what is probably going to happen a week in advance. I took advantage of this whole situation a few times the last few weeks because the defense pricing was actually like you would expect the Chiefs to be one of the higher priced defenses with Willis playing, but they weren't. They were like 12th and the 15th for a couple of them. So you can definitely take advantage of the pricing sites if they're behind.
That being said, I would not roll Willis out against Denver. They've been absolutely horrid against QBs. Like there's no way.
It says on DFS when I went up for the pricing that he was actually facing the worst ranked defense for quarterbacks.
And that's accurate. In the last 3 weeks. It's been all season. They have not. It's a really good defense.
Where they priced the Broncos, just for curiosity.
They're giving up 11.1 points per game to QBs.
Yikes.
They're the 11th price defense. So I would definitely take advantage of them in
Denver
DFS lineups. Yeah, especially even if Tannehill plays, he's coming off that ankle injury and he's just going to be rusty. Are they at home? Who's at home for that match?
Tennessee's at home.
Tennessee's at home. So I don't like that as much. I typically like to have my defense as a home squad just because they kind of play up at home. But either way, that's something to definitely keep an eye on because they're not going to adjust pricing throughout the week. Anyway, so for my lineup, I'm going to try to make this quick and easy for a couple of these because I know the Pens start in 10 minutes and you guys are after it.
Obviously.
Justin Fields at quarterback. You're riding the wave, throwing him in there. I didn't care about the price. He was going in my lineup either way. My second player, running back, did not care about the price. No matter what, he was going to be in my lineup. Saquon Barkley. Just look at the chart where Houston is. What is it, 38.1?
38.1, yep.
It's so dark I can't even read it. Like, his matchup is going to be – it's just insane. Josh Jacobs went completely nuts against them. Derrick Henry, which, always does. I'll bank it right now. He will be RB1 this week. Unless some guy comes out of nowhere and scores 5 touchdowns again.
Ken Walker.
How can you say that and not make him your guy this week?
Well, I'm expecting it. That's why he's in my DFS lineup. And wait, for only fantasy?
Yes.
I used Barkley already this year, I thought, and you can't use him twice.
Is that a rule? I subscribe to things monthly.
I wanted to do something different, but I had Barkley, but he's absolutely going to smash. And if you think Justin Fields was too easy, Saquon Barkley is way too easy. If he doesn't score multiple touchdowns this week, I'll be disappointed. Second running back, I went with Jamal Williams. Chicago got rid of Roquan Smith. They got rid of Robert Quinn. I think that their defense is just going to get worse, and you're going to start to see that over Joe's charts over the next few weeks. DeAndre Swift is still working his way back into the offense. I know Dan Campbell said that he wants to get him more involved. I still think that Jamal Williams is going to have enough of a play for me to pay down and get him in my lineup. And he's still getting the goal line work when Swift has been on the field. So I felt good about him as my RB2.
Can we pause real quick?
Yes.
So Chad said that CPAT was out of play without Jameson, but he could still do Osborne and Strong for Julio. I still personally don't like the move. I think Julio can't stay healthy, and he's not really doing much. So it's like, I don't know. You're just trading stuff for stuff. I don't know if it really moves the needle for me.
I am contemplating dropping Julio in the Dynasty League I have him in. That's where I feel about that.
I would rather trade like a third-round pick for Julio than give up Osborne and Strong.
Especially Strong, because you never know. He could have a role if there's some injuries in the future.
He had really good advanced metrics in terms of like his like athletic profile. So you never know. But I wouldn't do it. But you do what you feel is best in your spirit, Chad.
Wide receiver. I went with Mecole Hardman. So I've been eyeing him last few weeks. I've had him in several DFS lineups. Just watching some of the primetime games that the Chiefs were on, you can just tell that Pat Mahomes is targeting him. Like, he's not always open, but they're trying to find ways to get him the ball, similar to what they were doing with Tyreek Hill. He's getting some end arounds. He had 9 targets last week in a touchdown. I felt really good about that. And the Chiefs, their rushing attack has been absolutely abysmal. They're trying anything possible to get one of those guys to just wake up. Jerick McKinnon was your leading fantasy player there with 10 points, and he got basically all of them off receptions. Like, they're just completely just decimated at the running back position and can't get anything out of it, to the point where Patrick Mahomes threw 75 times almost last week. Like, that's just absolutely insane. No matter what happens, if he's throwing 50 to 70 times a game, all of those guys are going to have opportunities Obviously, Travis Kelce's going to be the guy. Juju's been great. He had 10 receptions last week. Mecole Hardman is getting looks, and he's still priced down at 4,500. It's just an absolute steal in terms of what he's being targeted at. So until they adjust for that and put him back up around the 5,000 to 6,000 range, he's going to be in my lineup week over week. Next one, Chris Olave. Pittsburgh Steelers have been absolutely terrible against the pass. I think Ahkello Witherspoon is going to miss this week again.
Probably for the
potentially.
best.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that the hamstring is nagging him again to the point where he's not practicing. William Jackson III recently acquired is also not practicing.
Exactly. His back, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Levi Wallace did return today.
Yep. And I think Chris Olave's week last week was kind of mid, so I think he's just going to have like a big bounce back week against us, unfortunately.
No way. TJ Watt is going to terrorize Andy Dalton.
I love Olave. He came in at 12. I had him exactly at 12 where the consensus has him too. So
yeah, you had him at 12. Or no, we had him at 11, and then Drew had him at 17.
Oh, I had him at 11?
Mm-hmm.
Did I have Juju?
You had Juju at 12, and so did I.
All right.
It's weirdly close. And it's not, and I'm looking, it's not the same. Me putting someone's in twice.
Mm.
Who did that? Me?
I did that a couple weeks ago.
It's happened in the past, yeah.
Yeah.
Third wide receiver. Complete gut call. I'm going to be in the building.
Chase Claypool?
Zach's going to be in the building.
He's going with George Pickens.
It's going George Pickens. I have been to a Pittsburgh Steelers game 12 times. The Pittsburgh Steelers have won 11 of those games. I feel good about this, and I think that they're going to throw the ball enough. They're going to have some balancing after the bye week. They're going to recover a little bit. They're going to look better. And who's most likely of the wide receivers that the Steelers have that's going to score a touchdown? George Pickens. He's also
tough.
He's also priced way below Deontay Johnson, so that was my cutoff.
That's fair.
I'm looking at this like I'm going to be in the building. I'm going to feel good about it. I'm going to watch this guy ball out, and that's what I'm hoping for. And that's what you do in DFS line. You're going to throw a dart.
What are you going to do when Steven Sims scores the first touchdown of the game?
You mean Gunnar Olszewski? Olszewski, whatever?
I'll be really happy because I'd prefer to win than win.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that play because if you look at the win rate for New Orleans for their pass rush, it's abysmal. They're like bottom 2 or 3 in the league, but they give up less than 200 yards per game on defense throwing. So they're really best attacked through the ground. I think if there's going to be a game that Najee has like a rookie year Najee game, it's going to be this one off of the bye week. So it'll be interesting how it plays out, but they're very much like the too high bend don't break kind of team. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, this is, like I said, this is a dart throw based off my gut, what I think is going to happen. I think he's going to score a touchdown. Hopefully that hits. And then at tight end, I felt really good about this one. I went with Cole Kmet. To your point earlier about Justin Fields, there is the possibility where it doesn't work in the passing game. And I didn't want to target a wide receiver on that offense and then getting a 5 or something from a wide receiver, because that's where you want to ultimately hit. Tight end's typically a punt position when you're doing DFS. I'm hoping that last week wasn't a fluke. I was high on Cole Kmet coming into the season like many others. I'm hoping that this was their time to turn it around and he could be a solid tight end moving forward. I'm ready to start moving him up my rankings, and he's priced at 3,400. He was like 10th in pricing, so I felt really good about throwing him in my lineup. If he does, that doesn't necessarily destroy your lineup for the week.
16.9 points per game allowed by Detroit in the last 3 weeks. Yep. Top 5 matchup for tight ends.
Yep, that was the other reason why I felt good about that. And then my flex, this one's a little shaky, I'll be honest with you, but I feel good about it. I went with Jeff Wilson Jr.
I like that, actually. I had him ranked in my top 20 this week for running back.
I think I did as well. He came in last week, didn't have any time to practice with Miami, and they had a 50-50 split right down the middle with him and Mostert. So for them to let him step in and have that much of a snap share, and he looked really good. Honestly, this was more of I'm going to play him because of the eye test and the fact that they trusted him enough to just step in and have the ball as much as he was. And the Browns, I think, have been struggling against running backs.
I didn't realize that Jeff Wilson was 4 years younger than Raheem Mostert either.
How old is he?
4 years younger than Raheem Mostert. I don't know.
Well, Raheem Mostert's older, so that's why.
Right. I don't know what the number was. It was something that I read today that was. Yeah. Let me see. I can look it up real quick. But to your point, Browns are like an matchup.
Yeah.
They're 12th best. Top 12.
I think Jeff Wilson's going to take this job.
They're 30-26.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I think he's going to take this job, and I think that we're still ahead of that. If he's had a 50-50 split last week, if he goes to like a 70-20 or a 70-30.
Well, it's not like they wanted to really give the job to Mostert. It was just that Chase Edmonds was so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I just feel really good about this based off the eye test. And when he was getting the ball, he was making something happen. So I feel good about this in my flex. And then finally, defense. I went with the Raiders.
The Raiders?
Yep. They have not been good, I don't think, as a defense, but
not good at anything. They even had someone fake fire. What's his face? Josh McDaniels.
Adam Schefter, not. Yeah. Twitter. Great follow. He's verified. Doesn't take much these days now. Anyways, 10.7 points per game the last few weeks. Sam Ehlinger has been very mediocre, but they're coming into this game, as Zach touched on earlier, with an offensive coordinator that has barely done anything as an offense coordinator calling plays. Like, it's going to be – there's a good chance that it's going to be a disaster.
It's either going to be the greatest offense that ever lived, or it's going to be an absolute train wreck. There's no in between.
That's why I joked about I'm taking their money line. I'm low-key hedging here where I'm going to play – the Raiders and DFS, but I'm going to bet their money line for the Colts because they're like plus 230 right now. And
is it really hedging if it's a $5 buy-in for the DFS?
Well, I won $2,500 last year on a $5 bet, so respect.
Did
respect?
Did. I like to play. All right, is that it? I think
that's all I have for DFS. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, with that being said, as always, I will remind you guys in the description of this show, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Apple, Spotify, wherever that might be, you will see the links to 2 different GoFundMes. One of those is for Rocking Around the 412. We are in year 5. We've raised up to this point since the mission started in 2018 over $22,000 to give Christmas directly to families in the 724 and 412 areas. Every single penny that is donated goes to providing Christmas for those families, toys, electronics, whatever, makeup, arts and crafts. The makeup is very fun to shop for, let me tell you. And we also, with the money that's left over, get a $100 gift card to provide groceries to go and get that holiday meal for the family as well at whatever their local grocery store is. To tie into the other GoFundMe, one of the kids that is going to be a GoFundMe kid this year is Isla Keene, the daughter of my friend Dalton, who tragically lost his life last month. She's only 2 years old and obviously is going to have to grow up without a father now. And while we cannot help with a lot of the burden that is going to be left there, we can help out financially. That GoFundMe has already raised about $33,000, which is great. But obviously, you know, we just want people to continue to share it and contribute to the cause, because this is going to be something that's obviously ongoing forever. So whatever you guys can do to help, we appreciate it. I know on behalf of the family, they appreciate it. So that will be in the description of the show as well. Leave us a like, leave us a 5-star review, leave us a comment, subscribe to the channel if you are not already. And until next week, we wish you the best of luck, as I always say, unless you're playing one of us. So for Smitty, for Joe, for Drew, this has been the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show. We'll see you guys next week.
Let's go, Pens.
Cowboys.